Story 1. The Vanishing of Millfield Road. I grew up in a town that seemed quiet, almost picture perfect. You know, the type: small streets, white picket fences, and people who nod at you as you walk past. But there was one road that no one ever really talked about: Millfield Road. Everyone avoided it, and even I didn't know why until I was old enough to be curious. I first heard whispers about Millfield Road when I was 13. It was at the bus stop, and the older kids were teasing each other about ghosts and things that happened there. One of them, a kid named Jason, said his older cousin had gone missing there about 10 years ago. I remember feeling a strange chill run down my spine, because it wasn't a story, it was a real disappearance, and the police had never solved it. Millfield Road wasn't a long road, maybe a mile or so, but it cut through a part of town that had been mostly abandoned for decades. Old factories, boarded up houses, and a tiny, crumbling church that looked like it had been empty since the war. The town had grown around it, but Millfield Road seemed stuck in time. The streetlights were rusty, and at night, the fog would creep in from the fields nearby. People said you shouldn't go there after dark, and most didn't. I was naturally curious, so one late summer evening, I decided to ride my bike down Millfield Road. My friends laughed when I told them, warning me I'd see things I wouldn't want to. I told them I wasn't scared. But as soon as I turned onto the street, a heavy silence hit me. The usual hum of crickets and cars from the nearby streets vanished. Even the wind felt different, like it was holding its breath. Halfway down the road, I noticed something odd. One of the houses, a long-abandoned two-story brick building, had a light flickering inside. It wasn't constant, it's just a quick flicker, like someone was tapping a flashlight on and off, or maybe an old bulb struggling to stay on. I stopped my bike and stared. My heart was racing. I knew no one lived there. The last person had moved out years ago, leaving the house empty and decaying. Then I heard it. Soft, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the wooden floorboards inside. It wasn't loud, but it was distinct. I felt my stomach tighten, the kind of tightness that tells you something is very wrong. My first instinct was to turn around and go home, but curiosity pinned me there. I walked closer to the house, peering through the grimy window. At first, I didn't see anything. But then, in the faint glow of the flickering light, I saw a figure, a man, or at least a man-shaped silhouette, moving slowly across the room. He was hunched over, and every so often, he would look up directly at me, though his face was obscured by shadow. My breath caught in my throat. My mind raced. How could someone be living there without anyone noticing for all these years? And why didn't I see him clearly? Suddenly, the light went out. I felt a wave of panic, stumbled back, and when I looked again, the figure was gone. No door movement, no shadow, nothing, just darkness. My bike had rolled a little, and I clutched the handlebars, my hands shaking. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. That's when I realized the silence wasn't just the absence of sound. It felt deliberate, like the road itself was holding back something. I decided I'd had enough. I turned my bike around and started pedaling back, fast. But then I noticed something even stranger. The fog that had been light before was thickening around me, curling and twisting unnaturally. It wasn't the normal mist from the fields. It moved, almost like it had intent. My breath formed clouds in front of me as I pedaled faster, but the fog seemed to follow, to close in from both sides. Then I heard whispers. It's not a voice, not a sound I could identify, but whispers, soft and unintelligible, coming from all directions. My stomach churned. I couldn't tell if they were in front of me, behind me, or inside my own head. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come out. The only thing I could do was pedal fast, ignoring the feeling that something was brushing against my shoulders as I rode. Finally, I burst out of the fog at the intersection with Main Street. The air felt normal again. The sounds of the town came back. Distant cars, crickets, the faint hum of electricity. My knees were shaking as I parked my bike outside my house. I never told my parents what happened because I knew they wouldn't believe me. After that night, I tried to avoid Millfield Road entirely, but it became an obsession. I started asking older residents about it, digging into newspapers, old police reports. I learned about the disappearances over the years. A young man in the late 60s, a couple in the 80s, a teenager not long before me. None of them were ever found, though the police occasionally discovered abandoned belongings. One story caught my attention. A man named Thomas Whitaker had vanished in 1972. His car was found at the end of Millfield Road, doors open, engine running, but he was gone. Locals claimed that when you drove down the road late at night, you could sometimes hear the sound of his engine idling. But nobody who investigated saw the car or Thomas again. Some said he was trapped in that house I had seen the figure in, though no one could explain why. I became obsessed with finding evidence. I returned to the road during the day, taking photographs and notes, mapping every abandoned building, every tree that leaned strangely, but nothing I recorded explained what I had felt that night. Something about Millfield Road was alive, almost sentient. People didn't just disappear there, they were swallowed by the road, absorbed into its silence. Months later, when I was 15, a neighbor went missing. She had walked her dog down Millfield Road just like she did every day. Her dog came home alone, muddy and trembling. The police searched, but no trace of her was found. The town grew quieter after that. Fewer people walked near that area, and the whispers about Millfield Road became hushed conversations in grocery stores and diners. I never went back at night. Even today, I avoid the road entirely. But sometimes, when I drive past in the evening, I swear I see lights flickering in the abandoned house again. And sometimes, I hear soft, dragging noises behind me, just for a moment, before the road falls silent. The strangest part is that the feeling never leaves. You can drive past the road safely during the day, and everything seems normal. But if you get too close after dark, the air changes. You feel watched. The fog, the whispers, the dragging, everything comes back. And I know, deep down, the people who vanished are still there in some way, absorbed into the road, trapped between what's real and what the darkness wants you to see. Sometimes I wonder if it's alive, the road itself. It's not just a place, but a presence that feeds on curiosity and fear. And I wonder how many more will be claimed before the town finally admits the truth. Millfield Road doesn't let people go. I'll never know what I saw that night. The figure I glimpsed could have been a person, a trick of the light, or something else entirely. But I do know there is something there. Something that watches, waits, and sometimes whispers your name when you think you're alone. And every so often, I hear it calling in my dreams, soft and deliberate. Millfield Road. Story 2. The Lighthouse Keeper's Secret. Our town was small and coastal. The kind where everyone knew everyone else's business, or at least thought they did. But there was one place no one ever talked about openly. The old lighthouse at the edge of town. Built in the late 1800s, it had been abandoned for decades, and yet stories persisted about lights flickering at odd hours and strange sounds echoing across the cliffs. I first heard about the lighthouse when I was 12. My grandfather, a man who rarely shared stories, muttered something about old Harrington and what he left behind. I didn't know what he meant at the time. My friends teased me for being scared of some old building, but my curiosity got the better of me. Old Harrington was the last keeper of the lighthouse before it was decommissioned. The locals said he was obsessive, checking the lamp every night, no matter the weather. Some claimed he was haunted by something he saw in the fog, but the details were vague. After he died, the lighthouse was abandoned, left to the winds and the sea. And yet, people kept reporting seeing the lamp turn on, sometimes in the middle of the day, sometimes at midnight, always without explanation. One summer evening, my friend Mark and I decided we were brave enough to explore it. We biked down the cliffside path that led to the lighthouse, the salt wind whipping our hair and the waves crashing far below. The building was bigger than I imagined, tall and imposing. The paint was peeling, windows shattered, and the door was slightly ajar, creaking as it swayed in the wind. As soon as we stepped inside, a chill ran through me. The air was damp and smelled of rust and salt. The wooden staircase groaned under our weight as we climbed to the upper floors. The lighthouse was filled with strange remnants. Old logbooks, lanterns, and glass lenses stacked on shelves. But what struck me most was a diary, partially hidden under a floorboard, with the name written on the first page. Harrington, 1937. Mark and I exchanged glances. I felt a shiver of excitement mixed with fear. I carefully opened the diary. The first few pages were ordinary, detailing weather reports and ship sightings. But as I read on, the entries became increasingly erratic, almost unhinged. Harrington wrote about the voices in the fog and the eyes watching from the waves. The handwriting became jagged, as if written in a panic. The last entry was the strangest. It simply said, "They are here. I cannot leave. The light will guide them, and I must obey." I closed the diary quickly, my stomach twisted. I didn't know what they meant, but it felt sinister. That's when we heard it. A low, hollow sound, almost like a whisper carried on the wind. It was coming from the spiral staircase above us. We froze. The sound wasn't wind. It was deliberate. Something or someone was moving. We wanted to leave, but curiosity chained us to the spot. Slowly, we ascended the staircase, every step creaking under our weight. The whispers grew louder, though I still couldn't make out the words. Then, at the top of the stairs, I saw it, a shadow, a tall figure standing by the lamp room. I thought it was a reflection or my imagination, but then it moved. The figure was hunched, almost skeletal, with what looked like a lantern in its hand, but its face, I couldn't see it. The shadow seemed to flicker, not like a human moving, but like a reflection in broken glass. My throat went dry. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. Mark grabbed my arm, shaking me. "We have to go now." We bolted down the stairs, stumbling over debris and each other. The whispers followed us, growing louder, echoing through the hollow walls. When we finally burst out of the lighthouse, gasping for air. The sound stopped. We looked back, and the lamp in the room was glowing faintly, though there was no way it should have been. After that night, I avoided the lighthouse entirely, but the mystery stuck with me. I started asking the older townsfolk about Harrington and the lighthouse. It's claimed he had been driven mad by isolation. Others whispered that he had seen something in the fogs, something alive, a creature, perhaps, or spirits of sailors lost at sea. No one would say for sure, but everyone had a story. Years later, I returned alone to the lighthouse, now in my late teens. Wanted to see if I could understand what had happened. The building had deteriorated even more. Windows boarded up, the metal railings rusted through. I found the diary again, still tucked under the floorboards. This time, I read the entries I had skipped before. Harrington wrote about visitors, ghostly figures that appeared in the mist, sailors who had died at sea, and strange lights under the water. He claimed they spoke to him, asking him to guide them. I remember one entry in particular. I am not alone. The fog has life, and it demands my obedience. I fear it will take me if I leave. That night, I stayed until the fog rolled in, and as it thickened around the lighthouse, I thought I saw shadows moving beneath it, shapes that shouldn't have existed. I wanted to run, but I couldn't look away. One shadow emerged, rising from the waves, and I could feel a presence pressing in around me. I don't know what Harrington saw or what he left behind in that lighthouse, but I realized one terrifying truth. The stories weren't just tales to scare children. Something was there, something patient, waiting in the fog, and perhaps it still waits for anyone foolish enough to enter. I never returned to the lighthouse after that night. I left town soon after, moving far away. But every time I hear the wind over the cliffs, I swear I hear whispers. And sometimes, when the fog rolls in, I see a faint light flickering in the distance, just like the lamp at the top of the lighthouse. The town will say it's just an old building, abandoned and haunted by imagination. But I know better. I know the fog has eyes. I know the shadows move. And I know that if you wandered too close, it might decide you belonged there too, just like it did to Harrington. The lighthouse stands there still, silent yet alive, and I can't help but wonder how many have seen it and never returned. Story 3. The disappearing road. Our town had a road no one really spoke about, okay? And if you asked the locals, some would laugh nervously, others would change the subject. Kay called it the Vanishing Road, and it was just outside town, tucked between dense forests and marshland. On paper, it existed, a cracked asphalt ribbon connecting our town to the neighboring county, but on the ground, it seemed almost alive. Cars would stall, people would lose their sense of direction, and sometimes the road itself seemed to shift. I first learned about it from my cousin, Alex. He was 16 at the time and had a habit of exploring places adults warned him to stay away from. One evening, he came over, pale and shaken, and told me he had gone down the Vanishing Road and something had chased him. Naturally, I thought he was exaggerating. Alex had a flair for the dramatic, but curiosity gnawed at me. A few weeks later, my friend Sarah and I decided to see it for ourselves. The sky was overcast, the kind of gray that made shadows darker and the forest edges seem endless. We found the road just as described, cracked, with weeds pushing through in stubborn patches. But something about it felt wrong immediately. The air was heavy, the kind that makes your lungs ache. As we drove slowly, the forest seemed to lean closer, branches scratching the sides of the car. The further we went, the road narrowed, though the maps said it shouldn't. Sarah laughed nervously. "It's just an old road," she said, but her voice wavered. I nodded, though I felt a cold knot in my stomach. Then the signs began. Mile markers that weren't on any map. Faded warning signs that weren't written in English. The GPS lost signal entirely, spinning its little icon like a compass possessed. And then we heard the sound of tires on gravel behind us, but we hadn't passed any cars. I glanced in the rearview mirror, and the road behind us stretched empty. No car, no lights, nothing. We tried to keep driving, but the road curved unnaturally, almost like it was guiding us somewhere. That's when I noticed a figure on the side of the road. A man, tall, wearing old-fashioned clothing, like something from the 1940s. He just stood there, perfectly still, staring at us. My breath caught in my throat. "Sarah, do you see him?" I whispered. She nodded, her eyes wide. Before we could react, the figure vanished. No movement, no rustle of leaves, nothing. We blinked, and he was gone. Panic set in. Tried to turn the car around, but the road had changed again. The path behind us no longer looked like the way we had come. The trees pressed in tighter, the air colder. We were trapped in a maze of asphalt and forest, and the GPS mocked us with its spinning icon. Hours seemed to pass, or maybe minutes. Time had a way of bending there. We saw more figures. A woman with a veil, children holding dolls that didn't look quite right. They didn't move, didn't speak, they just watched. And every time we tried to take a different turn, the road would loop back, stretching endlessly. Finally, desperation took over. I remembered an old trick my grandfather used to say: if you can find a way, stop driving. Step out and listen. I pulled the car over, heart hammering. We stepped onto the road, silence except for the wind through the trees. And then, whispers, low, almost indecipherable voices murmuring from the forest. They weren't words I could understand, just tones that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. Something moved in the mist. A shadow, then another, emerging from the trees. They weren't fully human, but not completely ghostly either. Their movements were jerky, unnatural. Sarah grabbed my arm, trembling. "We need to go now," she whispered. I agreed, but when we ran back to the car, it was gone. Our car, tires spinning in mud that hadn't been there before. We ran blindly down the road, following a narrow path through the forest that seemed vaguely familiar. The whispers followed, growing louder, almost screaming in a language I didn't know. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The forest opened up, and we found ourselves on a different road, entirely one that led back to town. The sky was now a deep twilight, though it hadn't been when we entered. The road behind us looked normal, mundane, like nothing had happened. When we told people, most laughed. "It's just an overgrown back road," they said. "You probably got lost." But others, older folks with weary eyes, simply nodded. They wouldn't go near that road, and they warned us not to. No one talked about anyone who had disappeared there, but the silence in their faces spoke volumes. Years later, I learned about the history. The road was built in the 1930s, placing an old trail that had long been a boundary between our town in the neighboring county. Local legends said that people who died near the marshes would sometimes appear to travelers, trying to lure them off the path. Some claimed the road itself had become a trap, feeding on those who dared venture too far. I haven't been back to the Vanishing Road since that night. I avoid that part of town altogether. But every now and then, when driving at dusk, I think I see a faint outline of a road that shouldn't exist, twisting through trees in impossible ways. And I remember the whispers, the shadows, the figures in the mist. The thing that haunts me the most is this: I never saw anyone else on that road. And yet, I know I wasn't alone. Something waits there, something patient and hungry. And maybe, just maybe, it waits for the next unsuspecting traveler to lose their way. Story 4. The Silent House on Maple Street. There was a house in our town that everyone knew about, but no one really talked about. It sat at the end of Maple Street, just past the old gas station, half hidden behind overgrown hedges and towering oak trees. It wasn't abandoned, not completely, but no one had lived there for decades. The windows were dark, the paint peeling, the front gate creaking constantly, as though it had a life of its own. The story I heard about it as a kid was simple enough. The family who lived there vanished one night, and no one knew why. No bodies, no notes, just silence. Some said they'd been taken by something unnatural. Others whispered about a curse. But of course, as kids, we were drawn to it. It was the perfect mix of mystery and fear. I didn't truly experience the terror of the house until I was 17. A group of friends dared me to spend the night there, alone. I was stubborn, eager to prove I wasn't scared, and I accepted. I arrived at dusk, the sky painted in streaks of blood orange and purple. The house seemed to watch me as I approached, the air thick and still. The front door groaned as I pushed it open, revealing a dark hallway lined with faded wallpaper and dust that swirled in the fading light. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Not just normal quiet. This was oppressive, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. Every creak of the floorboards sounded deafening. Explored cautiously, flashlight cutting through the darkness. The furniture was covered in sheets, old and lumpy, like forgotten ghosts frozen in time. I decided to check the living room first. There was a fireplace, cold and empty, and a portrait above it. A family, painted decades ago, their faces stern and lifeless. Something about their eyes felt off, almost as if they were following me. I shook it off as my imagination, but as I turned to leave, I heard it a faint whisper. Sss. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then I realized it wasn't coming from outside. It was inside the house, soft but distinct. "Why are you here?" I froze. My flashlight flickered. "Hello?" I called, trying to sound braver than I felt. No answer, just silence. My pulse raced. I told myself it was nothing. It's probably just an old house settling. But as I continued through the hallway, the whisper came again, this time behind me. "Leave." I ran, but the house seemed to twist. Hallways stretched longer than they should. Doors led to rooms that weren't on the floor plan. I ended up in a small study, shelves lined with dusty books, a desk in the center. On the desk was a journal, yellowed and brittle. I opened it, and the handwriting made my stomach churn small, precise and frantic. The entries were dated over 50 years ago, detailing the family's growing fear of something in the house. They wrote about shadows moving on their own, objects disappearing, and the whispers at night. One entry stood out. It watches us. It waits. We cannot leave, and if we stay too long, it will take more than just our fear. It will take us. I slammed the journal shut. The whispers were louder now, echoing from every corner. Stay, stay, stay. I ran toward the door, but it wouldn't budge. The house had locked me in. My flashlight flickered, then went out, plunging me into total darkness. I could hear breathing around me, slow and deliberate, coming from places that made no sense. I stumbled blindly down the hallway, walls pressing in as if the house itself was alive. Then I saw them shadows, not human, not entirely solid, gliding along the walls, twisting and stretching in impossible ways. They whispered my name, 1,000 variations, mocking, pleading, angry. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. Desperate, I remembered the journal. Ran back to the study and grabbed it, clutching it like a talisman. The whispers turned into screaming, voices overlapping, each demanding something I couldn't understand. I ran to a window, smashed it with my shoulder, and jumped into the overgrown yard. The glass cut my arm, but I didn't feel it. I ran until Maple Street seemed to appear normally, as though the house had never existed. When I looked back, it was just a decrepit old house, silent and empty. No shadows, no whispers. I was shaken, bloodied, and exhausted, but alive. I never spoke to anyone about what I had seen, not at first. People would have called me crazy, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't done with me. Years passed, but every so often I would drive past Maple Street, and I'd see a light in that house, flickering as though someone or something was moving inside. No one else reported it. Sometimes, I swear, I can hear faint whispers in the wind when I pass by. The house has a way of drawing people back. Locals know to stay away, to never speak of it, but curiosity is powerful, and something tells me it's patient. It waits for the next person daring enough, for foolish enough to step inside. I've never gone back. I've moved, changed towns, tried to forget it, but some nights I wake up in a cold sweat and I hear that whisper again, clear as day. Why did you leave? I don't have an answer, and maybe I never will. Those were for real life small town mysteries that still haunt the people who lived through them. Stories like these remind us that sometimes the quietest places hide the darkest secrets. Which one unsettled you the most? Was it the abandoned asylum, the hidden woods, the midnight intruder, or the silent house on Maple Street? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy true horror stories, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the next chilling tale. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.